Want to start? Okay. Is it on? Yes. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and start. I want to introduce our speaker, who is Dr. Tongyun Yin, and she is the curator of Asian art at the Harn Museum. And she's been doing that job since, I think, 21, right? And before that, she was a curator at a couple different art museums in Illinois. And at some earlier time, she was actually a professor in China teaching there. And so she's had, and she's actually grew up in China, but she's been in the United States now for a very long time. And the Harn is really very lucky to have her. I mean, as you probably know, there's a big collection of Asian art at the Harn. That was one of the things that really was a motivator for starting it, from some people here who gave them the big collection. So there are, I wrote it down, there are more than 3,560 works of Asian art that are in the Harn's collection. And so you obviously they're not all out on display, but from time to time they get rotated in and out. Okay, so today she's going to talk about Kaleidoscope of Colors, which is a particular special exhibit, but it's all art from the Harn. And I'm just going to leave it up to you to take it from there, okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Laura, for the warm introduction and for inviting me to the OCAMEC again here. So it's always a great pleasure to meet everybody and to share the projects I have been working on at the Harn Museum. So today's topic is Kaleidoscope of Colors in Asian Art. So this is not a new, this is a relatively new exhibition project. I finished and the exhibition opened in last April and will run for another year to the end of April in next year. But we do have this 6 months rotations for some of the light sensitive objects. So the upcoming one will be in April. So if you go see the exhibition before April, you will see some objects, some works there. And after April, there will be a group of new paintings and textiles put on view. Let's get started. So I would love to, sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, I would love to start my talk with this picture. So how many of you have seen this picture before? Great. Yes, right. So I saw a few hands up. So just a little bit background about this photo. This photo was posted online around 2015, and it became it very soon became an internet sensation. Why was that? It's mainly because of the color of the dress, right? So it's later be caught by the dress. So it was actually the story behind this photo is a mom was shopping for a dress for her daughter's wedding, and she sent this image of this potential dress to her daughter. But the daughter and the fiance, they got into discussions about the color of this dress. So who, uh, right. So what do you see the color of this dress here? I would love to do a little quick poll here. So do you see this like a black and blue? Do we have black and blue in this room? No? Okay. Oh, one. Do you see this black and blue? Okay, cool. And so I think the majority probably see it as a gold and white, right? Yeah, I'm gold and white camp group. Yeah, so this is very interesting. When I first showed this photo at the museum, we can, the audience is kind of divided into two half and half groups. Like we have like a half of the audiences see as a different colors here. So this is really like a great example of how different individuals process and see colors differently. So just to review the result of this image, so actually that's a real color of the dress. So that's a black and blue stripes. So I will leave it to you. If you Google the dress, there were lot of research publications from psychologists or neuroscientists. They dig into the reason why different people perceive these stripes, the same stripes in different colors. So I will leave that exploration to you and to talk about how actually different people experience and perceive colors so differently. So as we all know that actually, I think since the early 18th century, Isaac Newton has published an essay. He claimed that actually color is not inherent property of objects. So why do we see color? Actually, we don't see colors, we see lights, the light of different wavelengths, right? When the lights hit on the object, some of the lights was absorbed and some was reflected. When the reflected lights reach to humans' eyes and it reached to the back of our retina, and the brain took over from there and processed the different messages of the lights received. So as we can tell from this example, so people experience our brain processing the colors, the functions are very different individually. And so for the colors, it's even more complicated when we talk about colors from different culture or artistic contexts. So the different people from different culture background, their perceptions, their aesthetic preferences, or the symbolic meanings of different colors means differently throughout history and across different cultures. So this is the reason I wanted to do an exhibition by using the colors as an entry point to talk about how, in Asian art, in different Asian cultures, these colors were used as representations of different natural resources, as indicators of powers and status, or as symbols of this evolving political and culture development. So this is pretty much the main idea driven these projects. So as I just mentioned, in Western culture, so color have been always associated with lights. But in Asia, in many different Asian traditions, actually color was always connected with different plants, herbs, or mineral substances. So this exhibition used the materiality and the application of different materials on different objects to talk about the complex roles, the meanings of colors in different objects. So if you have been to the museum, you probably noticed this is the gallery, photos of the gallery. And as you see, we started from this green section, and we use these panels and these color straps to help visitors navigate through the different section. This is a green section followed by the gold and blue, and with these objects featuring red colors. So in the following section, I'm going to use different objects to talk about the different meanings I just mentioned represented by different colors. So first on the screen, you see two examples for green colors. So here I use different objects to mainly examine the different materials being used for color green artworks. So on your left here, this is a jade carving. It's a jade vase imitating an archaic bronze vessel. And the material of this particular jade carving was made from, we call it spinach green jade. It was kind of a knife-right jade material. It was imported from Russia. So during the 18th century, many of these type of materials were imported, found in Siberia, was imported to China and was used by imperial workshop to carve into these different decorative objects. So we see, you can see like the very characteristic features of this particular material is this very dark spinach green, but also with this black and very dark grayish flags on the surface. And we can see like this is a shallow relieved carving of birds and flowers and inscribed with Chinese poems as well. So on the right is a bronze statue featuring the Buddhist deity, the Buddha. So this bronze, the surface, the color of this bronze statue comes from the patina, the surface patina. The material is actually like a corrosion products accumulated on the surface of these objects. So the bronze is a alloy with copper, with tin, with a little bit lead sometimes. So this is actually the natural color of a bronze object. It's a little bit yellow, brownish brown with a yellow tone. But how did the color change from this to the greenish? It mainly because when these materials was exposed to the atmosphere elements, and it accumulated a corrosion products on the surface and make it into this green color. It kind of became a signature color of this antique bronze objects. And there's another very interesting facts about this, the preference of this green color. So if you have visited some of the Chinese museums or the Palace Museum in Taipei, you probably see a lot of early imperial collection, the bronze objects from the imperial collections. And the color of those bronze objects are very different from the greenish color. We saw it here, or even in many of the American museums. Those colors are more brownish and tarnished, dark, sometimes even black. So why was the difference? It's mainly because since 19th century, when the Europeans and Americans started to show interest in collecting this type of objects, they prefer this green patina. They really consider this green patina as indicators of the antiquity of these objects and also as authenticity of this particular group of objects. So they prefer to keep this corrosion and don't clean up this. So for the very tarnished and dark colored bronzes you saw in many Chinese museums, the surface being cleaned because those were not something like the scholars or early collectors enjoyed. But after that, since 19th century later, so this type of preference actually not only accepted by Westerners, but also later gradually adopted by the Eastern, the Chinese, and other collectors in the other part of the world. So nowadays, so people prefer to keep all these green patinas and to make this green color part of the signature characteristic of this type of object. And here I use two examples to show you how different glazes, like the different ingredients of the glazes, change the colors of the objects. So on your left is a Chinese, the model of an architectural, a model is a tower, watchtower, made during the Han Dynasty around the 1st century to the 3rd century CE. And this type of the greenish color on the surface here actually achieved because of the lead-based glaze used to apply on the surface of these type of objects. So why use lead flux as a colorant for the glaze? It's mainly because after adding lead-based flux, it will lower the melting temperature in the kiln. These type of objects, we call them, like in general, like a nickname is tomb objects. So those objects were mass produced to be buried with the deceased during that time period. So this practice, ritual practice, funeral practice, was associated with a belief at that time when during the Han Dynasty, Chinese people believe each individual has two souls. So after they pass away, one soul will reside in the tomb, another will fly into the Western paradise. So the tomb became a permanent residence for the deceased. So all these type of furnitures and buildings, architectures, everything one might need in this life will be buried with the deceased in the tomb to serve the functions in their afterlife. So all these type of the tomb objects has a very large demand on market, so it was mass produced. And by adding this particular glaze, lead-based glaze, it lowers the temperature, it increases the efficiency in mass producing these type of tomb objects. So, but also it gave this very beautiful greenish color, as because the iron, the lead glaze was not pure. So because of this iron impurity in the glaze, that's kind of produced this type of green colors. And on your right is a Korean jar. It is a celadon, and the celadon was used a different type of glaze. It's used iron oxide as a colorant to produce this beautiful green color. And it was this type of stoneware was fired in a relatively higher temperature kiln, and it was fired in a reduction atmosphere, meaning like during the firing process, water or smoke were introduced into the firing kiln, the chamber, so to lower the amount of oxygen in the kiln, and combining with this iron oxide glaze to produce this very beautiful, unique color for celadon. And in the blue section, I talk about different type of pigments or minerals we use to produce different type of blue colors to mainly showcase the cross-cultural exchanges of ideas, materials, techniques, and innovations throughout Asia. So on this screen, you see two examples made of blue and white ceramics. So on the left is a Kushan-style Iranian pottery. And so we see like both of these potteries, we use cobalt blue. It's a mineral found in Central Asia to create the blue designs. And so throughout history, though, this particular material, cobalt blue, was introduced, was transported through Silk Road to China. And with this technology and this technique, this material was later refined by Chinese potters to make this blue and white porcelain that established its reputation around the world. So we see here on the right is an example from the Ming Dynasty. And by that time, not only imported cobalt blue was used as decorative materials for these blue and white ceramics, and indigenous, like locally mined materials was also used because before 15th century, and the trade between Central Asia and China was disrupted. So it encouraged the potters to find more local materials for these favors designs. And here is another material that used to not only produce the beautiful paintings, but also used as a carving materials for the lions on the left. So here, this is a small decorative object. It was made from lapis lazuli. So it was a material only found in northeastern mountains in Afghanistan. And this material has been treasured by painters all around the world since medieval times. So you probably have seen a lot of medieval and Renaissance paintings by using these very precious, very expensive materials. And also, because the color of the blue color, and it resembles the color of sky. And as Chinese emperor, they self-claimed as the son of heaven. So this material, when it was imported to China, it won the favor of the emperors because of the colors resemblance to sky, and also because the rarity of these materials. So in 18th century, 19th century, we saw some of this lapis lazuli were carved into small decorative objects in Imperial Workshop. And on your right is another painting. Here is Peach White. And this particular painting this particular painting features the images of Lord Krishna. So you can see it here. and in the center and around the borders. So here the Krishna was painted in blue. Actually, Lord Krishna was always portrayed in blue in Indian art. It's because, as I just mentioned, a very similar idea. Blue is a color of sky and the ocean. So it's really use a color to show his omnipresent features and also to show his encompassing powers. So here on this textile is a very large, beautiful textile. So we see like the Lord Krishna is portrayed in different features. So here, and also the images around the borders. So he was represented as a 7-year-old young boy and very in all kinds of very luxurious garments and adored with different jewelries. And in the center, again, he appears again, but here as a grow up, as a young prince, and embracing her lover here in the center. And see this, there is an empty throne here. So actually this is explain the function of this particular textile. So this textile was normally put behind as a backdrop in a shrine for the real icon or sculpture of Lord Krishna. So this empty throne was normally right behind the statue or the small icon, so to show the presence of this Lord Krishna here. And so for some of this for some of the Indian arts during that time, and they use lapis lazuli to depict the deities and very precious materials to depict the colors of different deities. But for this particular textile, we don't know exactly what kind of material used for Krishna here. We hope we could, with some help, we can do some examinations by working with the faculty from Material Engineer Department at UF in the future. So, and also blue, we know like colors play a significant role in Japanese ukiyo-e block as well. And I show you here like 3 different prints representing different materials used for the color of green, blue here. So for this one here, what do you see the colors of this water? It has nothing to do with blue, right? It doesn't show any indication of blue. Actually, this is really a good example of some earlier ukiyo-e prints. And at that time, so print masters normally used these herb-based materials like day flowers or indigos to depict the waters or skies. And this is an example of the fading of that particular material because those are water soluble and also not really resistant to light exposures. So over time, the blue color changed into this very yellowish or tan colors. So this is supposed to be blue at early time, but because of the materials, the day flowers they use for these particular prints, and now we don't really see that color. But here in the middle, this is a very famous, everybody know this prints so well. So this is a great wave made by Hokusai. So this is actually was made after 1820s. So by 1820s, a new synthetic materials was imported from Europe to Japan through Dutch and Chinese traders. So those materials was called Prussian blue. It was a synthetic pigment accidentally found by a German dye maker in the 18th century. So by early 19th century, by 1820s, this material reached to Japan, and they provided such bright and beautiful blue colors, what immediately caught attention of all these ukiyo-e print artists and was used in their print making. So this is probably the most famous example of print ukiyo-e print artists using these new materials. And later, they further developed this new material and combined with the traditional Japanese book block techniques and printmaking to make this particular type of azuli eye prints. So it features on different shades, different tones of blues and domination of the bloom colors and different shades of blues in one print. So for the color gold, it mainly shows a few examples from religious objects and also some objects with practical or secular functions to see how these very valuable and rare materials were used to represent different religious and political meanings. So we know like jewelry has been used for jewels, accessories throughout history. And also on this, on the right is a gilt bronze a statue of Akivala Tashvala, is the deity of compassion in Buddhism. So actually using gold to adorn the surface of the Buddhist deities has a very early history in Buddhist culture. And according to Buddhist sutra, and the Buddha, the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, when he was born, he bared 32 different physical features. And one of the features is his the golden color of his the skin color, the complexions of his skin is gold color. So so later this was incorporated in making these Buddhist artworks and sacred works. So here we see we normally for this type of gilt bronze objects. So the craftsman will mix mercury and the powder of gold together and applied on the surface of these bronze objects. And after that, heat the bronze objects and to evaporate mercury and to have this gold remained on the surface as to show this the feature of these objects. And in this exhibition, we also have two examples. One of Japanese artworks from historical period and also this early 20th century already, and of contemporary artworks continuing using gold as one of the materials for their decorations. So on your left is the screen. You can see, if you get closer, you can see like these little squares, right? This is all gold foils pasted on as a background of this screen. And this is a very traditional technique, mastered by Japanese metal artists. And the mixed gold with a little bit of silver or copper sometimes. And through the ponding and stretching, a very time-consuming process to make this very, very thin gold foils to cover as a background for this type of screen paintings. And probably one of the most famous example of using gold foils for architectures, for Buddhist sculptors, architectures is Kingoji, I think, right? Kingoji in Japan. So it's an entire outside exterior of the temple was covered with this beautiful, shining, glimmering gold foils. So this is an example here. And on the right is a contemporary female artist, metal artist works, is a vase. So you see this, the title of the object is lip. It's almost like a bird is lifting and slipping away from the ground. And she uses gold materials here to add on this metal to show some kind of movement and dynamics of this very still object. So red, again, is a color used very commonly. You see in many different Asian cultures. Here are two examples. Actually, red is one of the earliest two colors used in Chinese art. One is red, another is black. And red has always been treasured by Chinese people because it's auspicious meanings and because of its associations with different mythological stories. And later it became celebrated as a celebratory colors for Chinese festivals. So when you go any Chinese celebration for birthday, wedding, or New Year's, you always see lots of people wear in red, and so this color here. So for this type of lacquer pieces, so cinnabar is the main material used to create these very bright red colors. So for cinnabar, to produce this type of lacquer pieces, so layers of cinnabar will be mixed and will be applied on the surface. And sometimes it's over like a few dozen layers, sometimes could even be like over 100 layers to create like enough depth of this material. So to allow the decorative patterns to be carved into the layers, the cinnabar layers. So all these decorations are not on the wood base. It's all on these cinnabar layers, the covers on the surface of this. So this form of incense burner was normally is from a set of the incense tools. So they're always paired with a small box and a vase to hold the tools, used for Chinese incense burning practices. As we all know, like red is a very auspicious and important colors for celebrations in China. But throughout history, red, the symbolic meaning of red expanded. Um, during, I think in early 20th century, so Chinese revolutionaries were inspired by the association between red color and progressive political movements, which was originated from late 18th century French Revolution. So they were inspired by this connection. So red became a symbol of Chinese Revolution in 20th century. So on the right is a painting painted by Zhu Daoping in 1996. So here featured on this painting is a very famous Chinese mountain called Jinggangshan. So it's Jinggang Mountain, which is located in the central part of China. So why is so important and why is kind of associated with the color red? Is because in Jinggangshan was considered as the cradle of Chinese Revolution. So it was a first Chinese Communist Liberation Army was founded over there. So it has a very important political significance in Chinese history. So here we see this artist uses foliage to indicate these kind of connections between the mountain and between its significance in modern Chinese history. And also we see red as also featured in the objects in other Asian cultures as well. On the left is an Indian storytelling box with background all painted in red. So this storytelling box is very interesting. It's for the people to carry it around, to walk around from village to village to tell about the stories of these particular deities. Here, this one, in the gallery, in exhibition gallery, we have this open so you can see like three little figures, the deities, Lord Krishna and his consort featured in these objects. And there are different panels about his life stories and also the miracles he performed. And on the right is another example of red, how the color of red we use in Japanese art as well. So koi, like the carp, the fish, has a very significant meaning in Japanese culture. And this type of red koi is always associated with bravery, with courage, sometimes with samurai as well. So here in this print, it depicts a story of a person who saved a fish and a carp, a koi, and so later the carp grew into a very, very large one and carried him to an immortal land. So this is a story from a Chinese classics in the early history. So this is all the examples I shared with you today, and so for the remaining time, I welcome any questions you may have. Okay.
It's on.
Are there conservation staff at the Harn who have worked on any of the pieces that you have shown us today? And if so, what did they do?
Conservation?
Yes.
We don't, unfortunately, we don't have conservators at the Harn Museum. So for some of the museum objects, like the metal pieces or bronze objects, we have collaborated with a professor from material science department, we have done this, the material examinations of those objects. So those really help us to understand the dates of those when the objects was made and what the materials was used. But because the equipment they have could only accommodate certain size of objects. So for some of the large, very large textile, they wouldn't be able to do it. So we hope in the future could raise funds to acquire some portable machines and equipment, so we could do more works on material studies of the objects.
Phyllis, you got a question?
Prior to the opening of trade in Europe between China and Europe, which colors went which way? Which colors went which way? In other words, were there Chinese colors that Europe adopted, and were there European colors that the Chinese adopted?
That's a very good question. Let me think. I think in terms of materials exchange, it's pretty much like what I mentioned here. Like some of the colors were transported from Central West Asia, in different directions. When I talk about, I only focus on like one direction going through Silk Road to China, but there were like other directions going to Europe as well. And for Chinese materials, I don't really know particular color kind of showing the like exclusively from China and influenced Western art. But I think throughout history, jade objects, right? Most of them was indigenous material, indigenous to China. And, but that was relatively later, I think, after the Maritime. And probably the most significant color palette influenced European art would be black and white porcelains, through 15th century onwards and through maritime trade road. And you can see a lot of examples in interior designs in palace and also in common people's homes as well. And lacquer pieces maybe in the black background lacquer pieces with Asian or Chinese decorative motifs. Has a strong influence on European furnitures and interior decorations as well. Yeah, but this is a very good question. I need to do more research. Thank you so much.
I've read that at least by the late 18th century, the blue and white porcelain became very popular in Europe and the US, and imported porcelain from China, and that's why we even now refer to fine porcelain as China.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's also like how, the name of China, like referring to the country, to the nation, also associated with this history as well. Yeah.
Right. And then as it became expensive, there were imitators.
Yes, right.
In,
Yeah.
In Holland, for example, which we now call Delft, which is extraordinarily expensive right now. But anyway, I have two questions. One is, I'm having a senior moment. The second question is, how does one go about identifying the authenticity of pieces which are donated? I mean, I bought something in Kathmandu, which was quote unquote authenticated antique, which is not actually, as I discovered, in the United States. But how does one go about identifying the authenticity of pieces?
This is a very good question, and this is and also a very challenging practice for curators, for scholar art historians as well. So, so for all the first step of art historical studies, to identify the true creators or from the which time period is the first step for all the research. But normally we use a lot of different methods. It's a kind of combination of different methods. So these days, more and more, we use more scientific research equipments or methods, like do this material analysis. But for some of the objects, it would be impossible or very challenging to do so. For example, to identify, to date some of the ceramic pieces, you have to really extract some examples from the piece itself, and it's kind of, destroy the entirety of the objects. So this practice was really against by all these Chinese scholars, but it was a practice adopted by Europeans for many years. They just, drill in small holes at the bottom. But it's not really preferred by Chinese scholars and collectors. And also for Chinese, for example, other type of Chinese ink paintings is even more difficult. It's using very simple materials, the paper and ink, sometimes not even with any color. So it's even more challenging. So for those scholars for a long time relied on this stylistic analysis. So we have to really have established a few examples with confirmed date or the start or artist styles, and using those examples as references to compare and to establish the sequence or the lineage of particular painting school or artist or time period styles. But that could be hard, because there are lots of discussions or disagreement on particular works as well. So I think it depends. But we hope, with the development of more technologies and equipment and everything, we would gain more information and knowledge about what we have.
When you accept a gift, do you then reconfirm the authenticity, or do you accept the authenticity of the donor?
We will do our own research. For Asian art, Asian culture, it covers such a large land, different practices, such a long history traditions. So we will rely on working with different scholars with different expertise. For example, for South Asian art, I will have the professors or other specialists on Indian art or to come over and work together. We will do our own research. Sometimes, our conclusion might be different from the donor's original idea. Yeah.
Read it, or you want to read it?
I think one of the greatest challenges in Chinese art, maybe Asian generally, is that it's not considered bad to copy, masters. And so sometimes it's difficult. I had a couple of small pieces that are in my apartment now that Christy studied for 2 or 3 months before deciding that they were 17th century instead of late 16th, because they really were copied from the earlier master. And I think that's pervasive. It's certainly not the case in the West.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic observation. And as you mentioned, like a later copy or imitating the early master styles or works are considered a very different practice from the Western artist. So imitating or copying the early masters' works doesn't mean like the later artist didn't have creativity or was not creative enough. So for this type of works, we really need to look at them and see their significance by placing them in their own context. So recently I have been doing research on the so-called forgeries of Chinese paintings. So we have some works I saw during my research, like they were attributed to some earlier painting master, like a 15th century something, but later we found it was probably made by some anonymous professional painters in much later time period. But does that mean that those works don't have any value? No, actually not. I think by looking into the creation of those type of works, we really help us to understand why those, why this later professional painters try to select a few previous masters, why these few masters were selected as a copy they want to make, and also what kind of market preference or collecting preference reflected from those type of copies. So I think by looking at each of the work produced within their own context, that will actually show us a different perspective, open up a different venue for our art historical discussion. So I prefer to not really look at one particular thing as this is real, this is fake, or so if a fake one doesn't have any value, it's probably we need to expand our concept or definition about value and significance.
We have a question up from Jane Wood. It says, curious about the first photo that showed the gold dress, then the second one was blue. If it's of the same dress, can you say why the photos differed? Maybe film or processing? Thanks.
Okay, yeah, that's the same dress. That's the exact same dress. The first one is the one like was posted online, and it was caused so much discussion and sensation. And the second one was later provided by the I think the seller of that, the maker of that dress, to indicate, oh, this is actually a black and blue ones. So there are lots of academic research from neuroscientists showing why our different persons' brain process color differently. I forgot, I read these articles like many years ago when it became like back to 2015, 16. So anybody, you can just Google the dress. It will come up with list of the things, the publications. It was quite fascinating. I think it's mainly because first of all, the screen, when the dress was took by a cell phone, and the screen was shown differently, and it was reposted on different screens, and everybody just see the dress on screen. And because of when the mom took the dress a photo, and the lighting was a little bit difficult at that time, it's not professional anyway. So all the things, and also when the light reflected to the back side of our eyes, like the cone cell, is a cone cell really catch the light and send the signals to the brain. That's how the different perceptions formed. So I'm not really like a neuroscientist. I don't really know a lot of terms, but there are lots of publications to help you understand why that was so different. Yeah.
Any questions here?
Would you please discuss about the origin of imari in Japanese porcelain?
Imari, I think that's mostly like exported porcelains made in Japan, and also mainly for European markets. And lots of the motifs and decorative patterns were actually influenced by Chinese art. So you can see some of the very similar depictions of the landscape, flowers, or sometimes even figural images as well. But they adopted a very unique color palettes, like a combination of the gold and very bright, reddish colors to really form their very unique Japanese characteristics. I think that's also tied into the long ceramic production tradition in Japan as well. They developed, that technique was imported through Korea to Japan. And imari was a porcelain, so that means it was made by using a particular kaolin clay. It's not a regular, not like the examples I show here. That's a different type of clay. So, and also those type of porcelain was fired in very higher temperatures. And so to maintain the temperature to reach that particular melting point and to maintain the temperature throughout the fairing process was challenging and difficulty as well. I think it was by probably the 15th century, and the Japanese people really learned how to produce porcelains 15 through this Korean potters. It's right. There were different kiln centers. I think about 6 or something, developed in Japan, and Imari was, like I mentioned, mainly like export porcelains and making for European collectors and markets.
I had one question. A lot of non-Western cultures, there's been questions about things that have been exported without the permission of the culture that they came from. And I wonder how prevalent that is with Asian cultures.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I think this is really a very complicated issue as well. So traditionally, museum has been, collecting artworks from all over the world. But as we know, because of this colonial history, and many of the Asian artworks left Asia not through like legal process. It was looted, it was stolen, it was, illegally digged out from the tombs. So that was a historical issue. But most recently, the museum field has developed very strict guidelines for us to follow. So we follow the AAM, the Alliance of American Museums, and also AAM, the American Art Museum Director Association. So they give us very detailed guidelines to how to do research of existing collections, or how do we deal with a future purchase or acquisitions of these particular objects. And also there are international laws like the conventions, 1970 UNESCO conventions, we followed as well. And, Asian countries, there were different countries has individual agreements or bilateral conventions with United States, for example, between China and the United States. Every 5 years, they will renew this agreement to prohibit exporting or importing certain artworks or artifacts into the United States. So there is a lot of different, legal findings and also ethical guidelines we follow these days. And also on the other hand, we also constantly doing research of the collection we have to do we call this provenance research to really identify the ownership of the objects before they enter the Harn's collection. It's going to be a very long process, but this is something we take it very, very seriously.
When General Chiang Kai-shek left China, went to Taiwan, his wife, his mother, and the 2 daughters took a lot of the art from China, from mainland China, and built a fantastic museum. My question is, well, Mao Zedong didn't care very much for art. He had other things in mind, and even destroyed a lot during that time, or sold it or whatever. Are there major museums, and where are they on mainland China?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question. So after 1949, when the People's Republic of China established in 1949, after that, Chinese museum has experienced a quick development, I would see, especially during the past 2 decades, since probably late 1990s, 2000-ish. There is seriously a museum booming all over the China. So we have national museums in China, in Beijing, and there were provincial museums, and also there are many major archaeological sites, archaeological finds from 1990s established their own museums. These days, the museums in China, if you go visit. There are like state-of-the-art furnitures and building facilities. But I would say the ideas about exhibitions or research or sharing resources probably need more work. Yeah, but definitely there is a significant development of museums on different levels across the country in the past 2 decades.
Any other questions? I would just have a comment, actually. I mean, I'm a book that some of you might be interested in reading. It's called Fragile Cargo. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's a history, and it takes you back to the 30s, and it's about the attempts of the Chinese to preserve their art when they were being bombed by the Japanese at that point, and how they got it out, what their attempts were. It's really quite a story.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're done, and thank you, Tongyun. That was great.
Thank you so much.